So hello everyone. The Psychology Club welcomes you to the first Self-Care Symposium, the student guide to mindfulness and stress management. My name is Lucia Rivas and I am the Psychology Club president. We hope that today you can have fun as you learn about basic strategies for balancing stress as it relates to academic commitments and beyond. So before we start, I wanted to give you a quick overview of our event today, and I will give the word to our speakers in a moment. They will briefly introduce themselves and guide us through their presentations. The first presentation, led by Eric Muko, will focus on mindfulness, and the second presentation, led by Laviva Break, will focus on types of stress management, and self-care strategies to combat stress. After this, we'll have a Q&A session where speakers will answer any questions that you may have. And finally, a brief meditation exercise before we say goodbye. So we invite you to sign in the attendance sheet that you can find in the chat. And also please feel free to post questions throughout the presentations so we can get to those during our Q&A. So now please welcome our first speaker, Eric. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you. And thank you, Lucia, and thank you to the Psychology Club for hosting this event. I'm super happy to be able to present some of this stuff. So let me try and share my screen. See if this all works. And if I click. Sorry, just setting everything up here. All right, oops. And what I have up on screen here is just the outline for the day, and Lucia just went over this. And I think for the Q&A, I think what Labiba and I discussed was that if you have questions at any time, you can just post it in the chat and we can look back at it later. If you want to ask questions live too, I think that should be fine too. And we'll get to as many as we can. So before we begin here, I just wanted to lead everybody in a brief grounding exercise. So if everyone would find a comfortable place, whether that's in your chair or on the ground, and with your feet planted on the floor, get your hands and arms in a comfortable resting position. And I just want you to take a moment and look around the environment you're in and notice if there are 5 things in the room, 5 objects that you can visually just see and note and label. And then when you're ready, I'll have you guys close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. And then I want you to just see if you can notice 4 things in the room that you can hear. Perhaps one of them is the voice of myself. Could be a fan or a heater in the room, or cars outside. And then I want you to see if there are 3 things that you can physically feel. Maybe your jeans or the fabric of your chair. And then I want you to see if there's 2 things that you can smell. And then finally, see if there's 1 thing that you can taste. And then with a final deep breath, you can go ahead and open your eyes and bring your attention back to the room here. So welcome, my name is Eric Muko. My presentation is called Demystifying Mindfulness, a tool for stress management. I'm hoping to just make a mindfulness practice sort of a little more accessible to everybody. I am an alumni of Metro State. I'm a current teaching assistant with Dr. Clayman. I've also conducted research on the effect of mindfulness on cognitive biases. I also work as a mental health practitioner for People Incorporated. where I commonly use some of these mindfulness techniques to help clients deal with some stress or anxiety they might be experiencing. In my personal life, I've been utilizing a mindfulness practice for going on 14, 15 years. I'm not a certified MBSR trainer, but as the title might suggest, I am interested in making mindfulness practice accessible to all, trained, untrained, certified, or uncertified. So what is mindfulness? And I wanted to open up this presentation and really kind of open the floor, and anybody can jump in, and we'll just kind of go through these one by one and see if we don't see any themes developing. What comes to mind when you think of meditation? And feel free to unmute your mic and just throw it out there.
For me, like my purpose behind meditation is really to calm my nervous system and also just keep me super grounded of my surroundings and just being aware of whatever is around me.
Great. Awesome. Anybody else? Calmness, awareness. Is there anything else that comes to mind? You don't have to be a meditation expert to answer, just whatever pops up.
Sleep.
Sleep. Wonderful. Sleep, calmness. Anything else for what do you guys think the purpose of mindfulness meditation might be?
Calming.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say calming. We've got a lot of stuff in the chat as well.
Oh, great. I can't see the chat, so if anybody wanted to just maybe say some of those things.
Peacefulness, breathing, grounding, perspective and contemplation, focus, reduce anxiety, help with anxiety, ruminating thoughts, reset the CNS.
Cool. So a lot of calmness, a lot of awareness, reducing anxiety. I'm going to ask a more pointed question. If you're meditating due to school stress or anxiety, should you focus on your stress or something else?
Focus on schoolwork.
Focus on schoolwork. Okay. So something else. Does everybody else agree? I'm seeing some heads nodding yes. Well, this question is a bit of a trick question, or at least a question without a super simple answer. While a mindfulness approach does not encourage you to become wrapped up in your stressful thoughts, it does encourage us to experience the moment fully. Meditation is not about feeling a certain way. It's about feeling the way that we're already feeling. You really want to focus on your sensations, your feelings, your emotions that you're experiencing in the present, and that's including stress. Mindfulness practice is about changing our relationship to our emotions, from being anchored to our emotions to maybe investigating them more non-judgmentally. So my objective here today is to make mindfulness practice something that's a little more approachable, a little more attainable, and simple. What's not required to incorporate a mindfulness practice into your life is any sort of particular religious beliefs, any sort of spiritual beliefs, a belief in anything metaphysical. And I know a lot of people think, including myself, a big barrier to mindfulness is that I can't focus. It's just not for me. Well, what I would say to that is it is for us who struggle the most with focus and attention that mindfulness is going to be the most beneficial. What is required is an effort to focus and a willingness to bring our attention back when it wanders. So how does mindfulness reduce stress? And what I've alluded to on the last slide is that it's not a way to distract ourselves from our stress in and of itself. And that's not to say that distraction is never useful. It just doesn't happen to be the mindfulness approach to stress management. What we do want to try to accomplish is to change our relationship to stress. Our natural inclination is to think of stress as the enemy. It feels bad and I want to avoid it. Mindfulness can help us instead become curious about our feelings, our thoughts, and in the process helps ourselves distance ourselves from it. We want to investigate stress. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. How does it feel to feel overwhelmed? What physiological changes are occurring? Maybe I'm sweating. Maybe my heart rate is increasing. Maybe I have a tightness in my chest. That's what it feels like to feel stressed. And mindfulness can have a really paradoxical effect where the more we investigate an unpleasant emotion, the more it loosens its grip on us. Initially, we might say, I am so stressed, but through paying attention closely, hopefully we can step back and say, wow, this feeling is really intense. That's how stress feels. Who here has ever used a Chinese finger trap before? So I see a few hands up here. So I think this is a good analogy for how mindfulness sort of works, where when we have a finger trap on, the more we pull away, the more we resist the emotion, the firmer grip it has on us. It's not till we sort of zero in and focus on what's going on that we can more easily sort of let it be and let it go. What mindfulness can also do is help us to become less reactive and more responsive to stress. But what does that mean? Well, a reaction could be seen as sort of an automatic response to a stimulus. I get overwhelmed when I see new homework posted on D2L, right? And maybe my reaction is to go and play video games to sort of avoid it. But if we take a moment to practice mindfulness, we might be able to respond a little more thoughtfully and sort of put an intermediary step in there between stimulus and reaction. So a very brief history for you guys. Mindfulness, the concept of mindfulness comes from Hindu and the Buddhist tradition spanning back thousands of years. The journey of mindfulness to the West began with the Buddhist Vipassana movement, or insight meditation movement, that gained widespread popularity in the 1950s in Burma, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. The movement really began in the United States when people like Jack Kornfield and Joseph Goldstein brought it over and were influenced by that movement. And in the early 70s, they began hosting a series of 10-day and 30-day silent meditation retreats. And then later in the 70s, this person came along. Does anybody know who this is?
Yes.
Who is it?
It's John Kabat-Zinn.
Yes, John Kabat-Zinn. And John Kabat-Zinn may be the most influential person of mindfulness as a studied phenomenon in psychology and beyond. What John Kabat-Zinn really did, beginning in 1979 with his mindfulness-based stress reduction clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, was to adapt a mindfulness practice to a clinical setting for those that needed physical or psychological pain management. In so doing, he secularized the mindfulness practice, and he also coined a definition of mindfulness that's widely used today. And this is from his book, Full Catastrophe Living. And what John Kabat says, or what he defines mindfulness as, is an awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. Oops, not quite ready for that. And the mindfulness-based stress reduction program is an 8-week program. It's weekly groups that meet for about 2.5 hours, and they do a 1-day full retreat. And they also have 45 minutes of daily homework. So while it would be great if we had the opportunity to do an 8-week program, that's not possible for most of us. But the principles that began with the MBSR movement has gone on to inform a more non-formal practice for subclinical populations, i.e. us psychology students pulling our hair out at the end of the semester. All right, so I want you guys to take a moment to kind of look at this picture and see if this is familiar to anybody. And I have a quote to sort of accompany this, and I'm going to read it here. It was in this moment, lying in bed late at night, that I first realized that the voice in my head, the running commentary that had dominated my field of consciousness since I could remember, was kind of an asshole. And this is from Dan Harris, from his book 10% Happier. Dan Harris was a journalist for ABC who had an on-air panic attack in 2004. And after so, he went on to incorporate mindfulness into his daily routine to help manage stress. And he wrote a book called 10% Happier that stresses a lot of the things, no pun intended, that I want to get across to you guys today, which is that mindfulness can be accessible to the average person. And also that mindfulness is not a panacea that's going to solve all your problems, at least for most of us, right? It's something that can contribute to our overall well-being, thus 10% happier instead of 100% happier. And I think this quote really speaks to the idea that when one starts a mindfulness practice, they may begin to notice for the first time how distracted they actually are, how judgmental they are, how often our thoughts take us away from experiencing the moment and we're stuck ruminating about the past or being anxious about the future. How many people at some point in time can relate to this passage? Does anybody want to share a stressful thought that might arise when they're cramming during the end of semester or grading for that matter?
I'd say for me, like an existential fear of failing.
So you're thinking about the future, right? You're saying I won't get to where I need to be.
Yeah, it's I would have to agree with that too. It's always worrying about what that grade is to see how you're gonna wind out the end of the semester. I mean, just like getting done with the test and not being posted right away. You don't know where you're at, so you're in that future living. You're not in that present moment type
Right.
business.
Yes, absolutely. Well, hopefully it's through a mindfulness approach that we can not only begin to better recognize when we kind of get in those loops of, oh, I got this, I don't know what I did, am I good enough, this and that. And hopefully we can sort of escape this cycle if we start to incorporate a mindfulness practice. And one way to do that is to focus on what Jon Kabat-Zinn proposed, where the 7 most important attitudes to mindfulness. And the first in this wheel up here, and this doesn't necessarily go in order here, but we'll just start with a beginner's mind. And a beginner's mind is this idea of openness to new experiences, open to the idea that there's something new to learn. Excuse me. So often when it comes to everyday experiences, like breathing, for example, it's we've done this 500,000 times. We do it constantly. How can you possibly teach me anything new about the breath? A beginner's mind is this idea that every breath is unique and we have something to learn from every moment, right? It's also important to incorporate an attitude of non-judging. And a non-judging attitude is one that doesn't give a certain charge to thoughts, feelings, or emotions. When we're stressed, we may begin to label the accompanying sensations that come with it as bad. Taking a non-judging attitude, in contrast, we may notice the sensations that come along with us. Maybe our heart rate begins to increase. Maybe we're having racing thoughts. It's also equally important not to start judging our judging. Simply noting that the judging is present is going to be helpful here. We might think, I'm never going to get into grad school, sort of that future thinking. My GPA is too low. Starting to practice just noting that I have that thought and doing our best to kind of let it float on and continue on. It's also important to start to try to incorporate some acceptance. It's important to recognize and accept the state that we find ourselves in, whatever it may be. Acceptance is obviously a lot easier if we're not, acceptance is a lot easier if we are feeling great, but if we're experiencing things like disappointment, depression, anxiety, becomes a lot more difficult. I want to be clear here that acceptance does not mean that we have to like the state that we're in, right? But it does mean that we need to accept things exactly as they are, as rather than what we think they should be. An attitude of letting go may seem a little contradictory to the attitude of acceptance, but what we really mean here when we say letting go is striving for a sort of non-attachment to our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And again, this goes for both our positive and our negative emotions. We constantly find ourselves in a state of clinging to positive emotional states or pushing away the negative ones. Letting go is to let situations and emotional states just be what they are. Trust in this context is not, you have to trust your professor, you need to trust me because I'm up here speaking. It's more speaking to the idea that when you develop your mindfulness practice, you can begin to trust your own awareness and moment-to-moment experience a little better. Patience is the idea that you're not going to be good at any of this stuff from the get-go, right? It's going to take time. And patience is saying that it's okay. And with commitment and persistence, I will improve in these areas. Patience requires a certain amount of self-compassion to not get upset of ourselves for living up to the expectations on a certain timeline. If I had to withdraw from a particularly difficult class, let's say data and statistical analysis, patience might allow me to reevaluate my schedule and priorities and attempt the class again. One who is impatient might leave school in frustration or attempt to get their teacher fired. To become more patient, we must learn to recognize impatience. Noticing any tendency to rush through the next moment can be really crucial here. And finally, non-striving or non-doing is closer related to the attitude of letting go. It's the idea that I'm not going to strive to change whatever I'm going through in the moment. And I want to also be clear here, this does not mean that if you're working on your final paper, that you should just let it go and accept a final grade. And I'm not striving to do well in school, right? It's rather that we're accepting the stress that may be accompanying us when we're writing that paper. You know, meditation really involves a lot of paradoxes. The best way to achieve our goals about meditation is sometimes to back away from striving for the results and instead start to focus carefully on seeing and accepting the way things are moment to moment. And we can again sort of think back to the finger trap analogy, right? The more we're trying to pull away and push away, you know, it doesn't work a lot of the times. So who here has ever felt like they've been on autopilot? They get a negative stimulus, whether it's a bad grade or bad news. Does anybody want to share an autopilot moment? And it could be a good one too, where you caught yourself and then you became mindful and then responded better than you would have. Anybody?
I
I'll give
used to
you-
oh, sorry.
Oh,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead.
Okay.
ahead.
I used to go on autopilot all the time, just with negative thought loops. So practicing mindfulness was really beneficial to that because I'm able to slow my thoughts down, process things, and approach things non-judgmentally. So that's a positive thing, at least.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I know with me, I get a bad grade, or maybe I don't get an email back that I expected to get, right? And I start the rumination, and taking a moment to be mindful can be really helpful. And I have a way that we can do that with this helpful acronym, and it's called STOP. And so if we get a negative stimulus, the first thing we want to do is to stop whatever we're doing, notice that we're stressed, and just pause for a moment. And then we want to take a deep breath. This is the first step to reconnecting with the present moment. There's nothing special about the breath, right? But it is a good anchor given that it's reliable and it's always there. The in and out, we can always depend on it, right? And then we want to observe what's happening, and we can inquire our surroundings with a sense of curiosity, right? What am I feeling? What am I feeling? What am I sensing, hearing, seeing? You know, it's a lot like the grounding exercise that we did to start the presentation. And then we want to proceed to reconnect with our surroundings. So now if we go back to our bad news, maybe it's a gigantic assignment, we might decide to make a schedule instead of going out for a smoke or a drink or doing some other reaction that may be kind of negative. And I also wanted to present an alternative to the stop, just because I think one might work better for different people, and I think they're both useful. So I would just pick one of these and use it in these moments. And this is RAIN. This is from Michelle McDonald, a Vipassana teacher. And they would say, and you'll see some overlap here, right? The first step is to recognize what's going on, what's really happening. And then we want to allow and accept the experience just as it is. And then we want to investigate. We look around those thoughts, feelings, and emotion, what's going on. And finally, we want to make sure that we're doing our best to not identify with this experience. That stress that's happening, I am not the stress that's occurring. And she had this sort of handy acronym to go along with it, which is DROP, which is the exact opposite of what you should do, right? Which is what we often do in autopilot, where we're distracted, we're resisting whatever negative emotion we're feeling. We're oblivious. We're not even aware of what's going on. We're just caught up in it, and we're completely identifying with it. So there's been an explosion of research on mindfulness in the past decade. And I want to note here, this doesn't mean that the quality of all the research is robust. With that being said, I want to just briefly highlight some of the studies and meta-analyses that have been in support of the efficaciousness of mindfulness-based intervention for stress reduction. And in the interest of time here, I'm just going to briefly go over these last two here. And the first of the two is the study was called the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction for Healthy Individuals, a meta-analysis. And this looked specifically at non-clinical populations, and it examined 25 different studies. And they found a moderate effect size, both pre and post and between group. However, there was a bit of heterogeneity of results across studies. So in some studies, it worked pretty well, and some studies, mindfulness was not shown to be effective. Overall, though, results suggested a large effect on stress, moderate effects on anxiety, depression, distress, and quality of life, and a small effect on burnout. So what that says to me is that if you sort of let your day-to-day stress build up to a point where you're completely burnt out, it might be too late at that point, right? You might need to look into something else. The only study that I actually saw which looked at stress of psychology students was this last one here. And they looked specifically at stress and burnout measures of both psychology and medical students. They did, again here, both a between group and a pre-post design. And the between group was the mindfulness-based stress reduction compared to a control group. We look at 288 students from the University of Oslo, and analyses indicated that it was effective, that mindfulness intervention helped reduce mental distress, increase subjective well-being. And what's really interesting here is that they looked at men and women separately. And when they did that, they found that it was not significant for men, but it was significant for women. So whatever men are out there, I'm sorry, everything I've been saying applies only to the women, according to this study. So kind of going along with that research, I want to take a moment to talk about, is mindfulness an unmitigated good? And the answer is no. And it's important to recognize the limitations of mindfulness. One study, for example, in 2018, it was actually done by Voss, who is from the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota, found that mindfulness practice is going to decrease motivation, specifically in the workplace. It is important to note here that they found that performance was not affected. And specifically, the way that they sort of thought this through was that while mindfulness doesn't decrease performance, that's because it's helping with stressors, right? Which then increases task performance and bolsters overall performance. So if you're not stressed, a mindful meditation may not be helpful for completing assignments. It also can decrease problem solving and creativity. And this is specifically with the sort of aha moments, the eureka moments. I don't know how many people that do research designs where it's like, you have that moment like, oh, I get it. This is how it all comes together. And in those moments, mind wandering might actually be much more effective than a mindfulness approach. My own research looked at the effects of mindfulness on confirmation bias, and we were surprised to find that mindfulness might actually increase confirmation bias. And future studies really need to be, there really needs to be future studies to look at this a little bit deeper. But what we sort of came to is that perhaps it's not always good to think about things non-judgmentally, right? And that includes our own thoughts. If we're told to not look at our own thoughts and biases judgmentally, we might just accept them, right? And overall, there's just a lack of studies investigating the adverse effects of mindfulness. So that's going to be really important in the future. So we know exactly where it is going to benefit us and where it's not. And finally, I'm going to go over quickly how we can practice mindfulness in our own homes and in our day-to-day lives. And then I'm going to shoot it over to Labiba. So it's important to set a time limit. You know, I I do as short as 5 minutes. A lot of times 10 minutes is fine. You know, getting comfortable. I have a meditation cushion, but you can lie down, you can sit in a chair, you can sit with your back against the couch, whatever is going to be helpful for you. Excuse me. And just noticing our sensations. So we kind of went through that with the grounding exercise to begin with. And we just want to focus whatever's happening in the present moment. And our breath is a good anchor for that. Noticing our body, doing body scans. What does my hand feel like right now? What do my feet feel like right now? Paying attention to our sounds in the environment. And a lot of people think you have to have your eyes closed. You can do visual meditations, right? Just keep your eyes open and what's going on in those moments of super high stress, just taking a break and saying, oh, there's my marker. What does my marker look like? You know? And your mind is going to wander, right? So it's important for us to be kind to ourselves and just gently bring our attention back to the present moment. And we can see that there. And I'm going to bring this slide back up right at the end, right before we begin a brief 5-minute meditation. So with that being said, thank you everybody for listening. And I will turn it over to Labiba. Thank you guys.
Hello, thank you. My name is Labiba. I see some skepticism. I myself was a skeptic, but I have found mindfulness ways to practice self-care without some of the time consumption needs. So my side of things will be just a tad different. Failed to really introduce myself, but I'm a counselor at Counseling Services at Metro State, practicum student counselor. I'm a social work student at the University of St. Thomas. I am a coworker of Eric's outside of school. My BA was from Metro State, Individualized Studies in Sociocultural Psychology and Linguistic Studies. I am a woman of color, and so you will see some mixed stuff in here that is more directed to people of color because the self-care aspects vary a little bit. So let me share my screen, and I apologize if I have any typos and whatnot in here. Here we go. Okay, moving you guys. Okay, so stress can be normal. It is a normal biological response that we have to stressors in life. But it becomes an issue when we do not know how to deal with and close that cycle of stress. I will provide a resource later on today, but there is 2 doctors that are siblings named Amelia and Amalia that talk about sort of the cycle of stress, how originally, evolution-wise, it was like you being chased by a lion out in the middle of nowhere, right? Alarm, right? Adrenaline kicks in, we run. That running and then the final relief of realizing that you're safe is what releases the hormones that calm us down and relax us and allow us to close the stress cycle. In this day and age, we don't have lions chasing us, but we have sort of this multiple anxieties and stressors throughout the day that add on top of each other. So thinking of, okay, I woke up this morning to my 6th alarm, right? I'm a multiple alarms type of person. By the time you're up for your 6th alarm, you're already stressed because you didn't wake up to the first one. You put your coffee on and, you know, you put your pot in funny and your coffee spilled everywhere. That's happened to me. That's another little bit of stress, right? You come downstairs, one of your kids or your nephews or your partner or whoever, right, didn't replace the toilet paper. That's more stress, right? And this, you haven't even left your house yet, right? Add in traffic, add in red lights when you don't need them, add in being late, getting to work, coworker issues, partner issues, and on and on and on and on and on. So that's when stress begins to overwhelm us, when we do not practice the daily ways to close the cycle. And so mindfulness is one of the ways to do that, with meditation, silence, getting awareness of what's going on. Now, majority of that will be in all of this, but certain people deal with certain things different ways in everything in life. And when it comes to mindfulness, some of us can be with ourselves in the silence, and some of us cannot. So this is a little bit more the cannot, right? So I already talked a little bit about this. The link under that is actually the cycle of stress, and that specific video, I will pop it into the chat later on. Okay. This is where our stress cycle gets confused, right? We have the lion chasing us at the top, right? That's the hormone response that we get from the lion chasing us. And then we continue to be chased by the lion and re-release those hormones, and get chased by the lion and re-release those hormones over and over and over and over. And we never close that cycle. This is where we end up getting stuck, consistently re-adding more stress onto ourselves. Our bodies are not programmed to just automatically shut down and heal from that stress. So, tools to break the cycle. There will be more on more slides. Laughter, right? How do you feel internally, externally? How do people around you feel when you make them laugh, when you laugh at them, when they laugh at you, right? And I don't mean in a bad kind of way. I mean like self-deprecating humor, right? The last time I did this presentation, I told everyone I am beyond anxious, right? I can feel my hands shaking. You can't see it, but I'll bring it up and laugh at myself, because, you know, we all experience it, and I can either feel self-conscious about it or lay it out there, right? I know everybody else feels anxious, and I know you're, you know, in this with me. Physical affection. A 20-second hug will close that stress cycle, right? You have partners, you have siblings, you have friends, you have parents, right? And guess what? If you don't, your brain doesn't know the difference. So hug yourself for 20 seconds. Kid you not, it works. I have tried it, right? I was skeptical, right? I've said I'm a skeptic. These are things that I have actually tried, and they have worked. Crying. Find the last movie that made you bawl your eyes out. If you don't want to like pull out your own, you know, past issues and cry about those, pull out a movie and just bawl your eyes out. Indian movies are phenomenal to make you bawl your eyes out. Like phenomenal. Indian as in India. Physical activity, right? If our natural instinct when a lion is chasing us is to run, then run. Right? Go take a jog, go on a walk, go start dancing, anything active, right? Take a walk around whatever parking lot you're nearest, walk around your house a couple times. Play. We have all been children at some point or another in our lives. We remember how fun that was. Play is very mindful, because you can't have fun if you're not present in the fun. Right? So play, you know, kids, family, friends, whatnot. And if it turns into like, oh, you're being silly, make it even sillier. Turn it into laughter as well. Creative self-expression. Using your imagination. One, to imagine yourself. I'm not stressed. I'm totally fine. I got this, right? Positive self-talk. Imagining yourself as a superhero. Right? Who's watched Shazam, right? Get that image in your head. It's hysterical, like seeing this grown man in this leotard thing, whatever it is. Imagine yourself. I have overcome. I'm a superhero. I'm a genius. I am. Talk yourself up. Listen to music. mindfully listen to the lyrics, listen to the beat, listen to the rhythm, be very, very present in it. This also works if you are religious. You can listen to the Bible, you can listen to the Quran, you can listen to prayers. I've come across multiple coworkers throughout my years. When I walk in, they have headphones on and they're listening to like the morning preacher on whatever show it is, right? I don't want to say its name, but the Amazon device that listens to and talks, because it'll respond to me if I say the name, Alexa. It has the capacity to read quite a few contents for you and is connectable to your Kindle. And you can use that as a mindfulness thing. Majority of us have smartphones, YouTube, podcasts, all of those things. Art is another way of bringing about creating mindfulness, imagination. You can use it in multiple ways, right? Either putting in the image onto that paper, or you can create healing cards. Every time you find something that motivates you, every time you find something that brings about passion, every time you find something that really gives you hope, take one, a Post-it, flip it onto the backside and draw that, right? The first thing I did when I entered grad school is I took the logo from my grad school and I drew it on this piece of paper, and it's on my desk and been there for 3 years now. I look at it to remind myself, what is my goal, right? And that will motivate you. Writing is the same thing, right? Nobody is judging your writing because it's for you. Sit down and express your stress, right? Like Eric said, you're not trying to push it aside, you're acknowledging its presence and you're accepting it. You can do that. Sleep is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself when it comes to stress reduction and mindfulness and all of that. It is very important because it's like the basis of everything. Wow, I put music in here twice. I read an article that called the anxious mind or the stressed mind the red mind, and the self-cared for mind the blue mind. So visualizing having a blue mind and everything that it means to have a blue mind can also be helpful. I cannot see what I wrote here. Okay. College stressors. Apparently I can't type in this while we're on here. Think of different things that stress you out in college. Deadlines, right? Rent, cost of books, costs of tuition, lack of time for self-care, lack of time for fun things. There are a ridiculous amount of stressors in college life. So recognizing that this is difficult. It's a very stressful time in our lives, right? Acknowledgement goes a long way. Now, for the BIPOC side of things, we have, oh my, okay. Sue, I can't remember his last name, is an author that actually, look at that. Daryl Wing Sue. He has a whole entire book, and there's a research paper on it that's a lot shorter to read, is Microaggressions in Everyday Life. So he talks about, and some of these are applicable across non-BIPOC and BIPOC, but thinking of everything that we've already looked at, these are more BIPOC specific stressors, right? Everyday hassles and stressors include life changes. These are things that we cannot control, that we experience almost every single day, various different types of life changes. Transaction, your perspectives and thoughts after you experience a microaggression, a micro insult, or another type of race-related concern, right? Did so-and-so really just say that? Right? Like it, and I know this happens to non-BIPOC people too. If you hear someone say something that sounds racist, but you're not quite sure, did did they really? Or am I just, you know, butthurt about this or whatever? And that ruminating thought about whether or not what you heard was right, that's another kind of stressor. Hypervigilance and skepticism, right? These are also applicable for women, LGBTQ plus, and BIPOC communities. Forced compliance to the Eurocentric way of living, right? Rage and anger, be it history-wise, be it experiencing racism currently, experiencing sexism, experiencing any of the isms. Fatigue and hopelessness for having to deal with all those things on a day-to-day basis. Lastly is taking strengths in the adversity, right? Yes, it's a strength, but it's a strength that is exhausting, right? Tying back into the fatigue and hopelessness. Sorry, I have a lot of content. So this is more self-care directed towards dealing with microaggressive stress. And these are items from his book directly. I believe it's chapter 5. It's a pretty spendy book. I borrowed it from the counseling center myself. So learning the language and concepts of microaggression can help as a BIPOC person to identify, BIPOC and LGBTQ plus, to help us identify where those stressors are coming from. Knowing the words and being able to identify and name the stressor. Learning how to confront microaggression. One example Daryl Tsu uses is, so I believe he's Chinese ethnicity, but born in the US. And so he does lectures on microaggression quite frequently. And someone walked up to him and said something along the lines of, wow, your English is great, right? Prior to even thinking of that or seeing that, I hadn't thought like, oh, when people say that to me, they don't realize that this is insulting, right? That's a microaggression, right? And a micro invalidation. You're being invalidated on this like sort of underhanded type of way, right? And his response to it is, yeah, I was born here, right? Like shock them with your response, surprise them with your comeback. It stops them long enough to think about what they said so that next time they say it, they stop and think about what they're going to say before they say it, right? So it's like making a change one person at a time. Social reassurance and support are another way to deal with microaggression and racism, sexism, ism-related aggressions. Preparation and practice to deal with. So like knowing that, hey, the next time someone says, oh, your English is great, this is going to be my comeback, right? I know what I'm going to say. Identifying inner sources of strength and your social identity. Most BIPOC people, all BIPOC people, I should say, not to generalize, but, you know, have experienced microaggressions, microinvalidations, all of these throughout our lives. We know and have the strength to deal with those things. So really taking in that and consuming it as part of your identity and identifying with the fact that you internally have the strength to deal with all of these, right? You've dealt with it for so long. Research-wise, and I can't move anything. Okay. Research-wise, these are the things that are being looked into and that are considerations for improving research on self-care and dealing with microaggressions. Understanding the differences in microaggression across race, gender, and sexual orientation, differences in how ethnicities experience microaggression. Like, for example, as a passing white woman, I experience a lot less of all of these things than would a Black man or a Black woman. How they impact different ethnicities. So micro-invalidations, aggressions, and micro-insults. And then recognizing moderators and mediators, like if a stranger said something racist to you, would that hurt more than a family member or a friend saying something racist to you? And then having those friends that are supportive be available and there for you. So what is self-care? It is awareness of the physical, emotional, and spiritual condition, right? In whatever way that may be. You are aware of your physical body and how it's feeling. You are aware of your emotional self and how that feels. And you're aware of your spiritual self, right? Be it religious, be it non-religious, be it spiritual in the sense of a higher power or a spiritual in a non-sense of higher power. It's being aware of all of that. Some barriers to self-care. Some of these I've already mentioned, some of these I have not. And these apply across all groups mostly. Time. Self-care is a privilege. Self-care, again, is a privilege. A lot of people do not have the time, the money, the motivation, or the knowledge to do self-care. BIPOC-specific barriers include stereotypes, core beliefs on what it means to be a hard worker. You don't take breaks as a hard worker. You only sleep when you absolutely need to as a hard worker, right? Lack of knowledge on self-care and all the various myths around self-care, what it means, what it doesn't mean, all of that stuff. Some of the techniques of self-care, and I'll show some examples. Box breathing is one. So I put some non-meditative, some meditative, all of that stuff. Qigong breathing, that is the one that is my favorite, and you will laugh, and I am okay with that, and feel free to do so, and I will be okay with seeing you laugh. It's pretty funny, and more often than not, you will need a napkin or something. I can't move my chair because it's stuck on something. So you have your arms to your sides. They're loose, they're comfortable. So you're gonna inhale really roughly, like, and you're gonna extend your hands up and open your arms. And then you're gonna exhale and pull your arms back down. So I'll do it just 3 times and then practice this at home. Okay. And yes, a napkin is a good idea always to have. So this is something I learned very, very recently. It's not really something that you can do in public, but what it did for me was that it completely cleared my mind. I don't know how, right? Like I said, I'm a complete skeptic, but it cleared my mind. There was almost like a silent bringing. Right? I'm not used to having my mind not be like this thought, this stress, that concern, all day long, every day. Like even when I'm sleeping, my dreams are probably all about stress, right? My mind was actually silent. Belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. This is very different than breathing in the chest. The easiest way to do it is to put your hand on your stomach and breathe. It goes down sort of the back of your throat and you will feel your stomach extend. And then when you exhale, it'll go back. Do it a couple times. These are things that you can do at a red light. These are things you can do every time you wash your hands. It's COVID, so you wash your hands a lot, right? Eventually, and I promise you this, I speak from my own experience, you will start to recognize your strength and your stress the moment you catch yourself taking a deep breath. Right? It's not the physiology that we get aware of. It's not the thoughts that we become aware of. It's not any of those things. You catch yourself taking a deep breath and you're like, oh, I must have been stressed. Okay. Mindfulness type of stuff that is non-meditative includes eating mindfully. I love food. Love, 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 love food. Enjoy the texture. Really appreciate what you're eating. Enjoy the taste, right? Indian food is my favorite. It tastes phenomenal. I like to eat and really enjoy the flavor, all of that stuff. Prayer is mindful, right? Whether it is Christian, it is Jewish, it is Muslim, it is whatever it may be. It is mindful because you're actively being present in that moment, asking for what you need, asking for the help, or maybe even just being angry in that moment, but you're being present, right? Gratitude practices, remembering to think about things that you're grateful for every day. Grateful for waking up this morning. Glad COVID helped with traffic, right? Minor things, but things that help. Body scans are and gradual muscle relaxations are also good ways to become present and in your body and being mindful. Dancing and laughter, right? Majority of us have, like I said, smartphones. Put some music on, dance, right? Use the people that are around you, get them involved, and bring joy to everyone. Right? Enjoy the sunlight when it's there. Minnesota is perfect in the winter when your windows are closed and you're inside warm, but the sun is like glaring outside. You would think it'd be 90 degrees outside at how like warm the sun looks. Doing outdoor activities. I'm not a fan of the snow, but a lot of people like being outside in the snow. Or you can be indoors and looking outdoors and being mindful in that. I don't know how I am on time, way past. Journaling, positive self-talk and thoughts, opposite action. If I don't feel like getting out of bed, I'm going to force myself to get up out of bed and go do something. Even if it's like getting up to go brush your teeth. While you're brushing your teeth, find something else that you can do and move on to. Healing cards already mentioned. Connecting with others, especially with COVID, this is really important. A lot of us survive and thrive in those social settings with connection with human beings, all of that stuff. Use Zoom, use FaceTime, group messages, group video conferences, and just hang out, right? Enjoy each other's company. Do the things that you like to do. Play video games together, right? My kids use things like that all the time. Right? Group video games. Okay, and these resources I'll also pop on there. Sleep, take naps, be kind and compassionate to yourself, right? You have permission to sleep. You have permission to rest. You have permission to be present. You have the permission to be with yourself. The RAIN exercise that I have posted in here, I believe it's very similar to the one Eric talked about, only this is Tara Brock, and it's very similar. So the link is for a 10-minute video, and it's all about practicing self-compassion, and she'll guide you through that if you would like to try it. Practicing non-judgment works is within what Eric mentioned. Writing love letters to yourself. Sounds really silly, right? But write it in the third person, as if you're writing a letter to a friend, telling them how much you care for them, how much you appreciate them, how much you appreciate the things they do, all of that stuff, and then send it to yourself. Or hide it in a drawer so that you can find it a couple of weeks later and be like, huh, what is this? And it's like, oh, somebody thinks really highly of me. Right? Self-soothing, taking time to cry, scheduling time to worry, baths, lotion, candle, music, all of these things. These are very good for being in the moment, for being present. Sense, like how Eric did the mindfulness practice earlier. This is one of those things. You can make a mini self-care kit that has, you know, all the 5 things that you need for each of the senses, or 3, 2, 1, right? For each of the senses, a little bag, and you can carry it around with you. Take yourself on a date, go for lunch, have some coffee, go to the movies, enjoy your own company. Last but not least is balance and prioritizing. In school, we have a lot of responsibilities. Make your lists, do the things that are mandatory, that are imperative, right? And don't be upset with yourself if you're only skimming your textbooks. This is how we survive in school. You learn how to skim like a pro, right? And that's just it. That's the reality of our lives. You learn how to skim. Don't judge yourself for that. You're still learning, you're still active, you're still participating, you're still doing all of that, right? A lot of professors are probably going to get upset with me if and when they see this. Seriously, skimming saves your life, right? Cross off the things that are not necessary. And lastly, schedule some time for self-care, right? Even if you put an alarm on your phone, like, okay, I'm going to bed at 8. So at 7:30, I'm a smoker. I go into my garage. I pull out one of my books. I chain smoke and I read leisure books, right? That's one of the things I like to do before I go to bed. I wind down, I do all of that. I go brush my teeth, wash my face, and then I go to bed, right? Each one of us will have to try different techniques for self-care. What works for you is what works for you. If something doesn't work for you, put it aside, right? Try something else, try something different. Judging yourself for not being able to do something is not going to help. This is just a question. How do you manage your stress care? How can you manage your stress? Right? All the techniques, the self-care, all of that stuff. Think about them. Think of different things that you can use yourself. Think of things that fit within your personality, within your identity, within your schedule, all of those things. Eric, it's all yours.
Thank you, Labiba. That was wonderful. I think Lucia, didn't you? Oops.
Can you lower your mic? I was
Yeah,
gonna.
there we go.
We can hear you now for some reason. I can't hear you. No.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Labiba. That was wonderful. Did we want to do Q&A now before we went into our closing meditation?
Oh yeah. We are early, so we have like 20 minutes that we can spend, or 15 minutes that we can spend with Q&A. So please feel free to type in your questions in the chat or unmute yourself, and the speakers will be able to answer your questions or comments.
So I see one right here. So Lisa, when you say, how can we do this alone? Do you mean, are you referring specifically to a mindfulness practice, or?
I think Lisa is not with us anymore. I think she typed in that question when you, after you did your grounding exercise.
Okay. She says, I would like to meditate with others. So, so I do it alone. Most of the time is something that I do alone. And there's some great apps, some phone apps to utilize if you're just beginning, or even if you're far in your practice. Calm, I think, is one of the most popular ones. I like Sam Harris has one called Waking Up that I think is really good, especially for some of the folks that are a little more in their head, like I tend to be. But you can also just, and those are paid though. So I think you can do like some introductory stuff for free. You can also use Insight Timer. I use that one, and you can just search, and that's free. You don't have to pay for it. And you can get plenty of them. And even YouTube is going to be your friend. You can search plenty of useful meditations on YouTube that are just great. And, you know, once you get comfortable with the practice, most of the time, and this is just a personal preference, I do enjoy silent meditation. So I kind of just know how it goes. I know what they're going to say to me if I do listen to a guided one. And, you know, I've gotten into the habit of being able to, doesn't mean I'm good at doing it, but I just know what I'm supposed to do, you know.
YouTube also has a lot of guided meditations. For those of you who can't do the silence, there's some that are 40 minutes long that will put you to sleep like this. And there's some that are really, really short for throughout the day. Like the rain one is 10 minutes long, practicing self-compassion, addressing, you know, guilt throughout your life, things like that. So use YouTube if the cost is, you know, an issue. There's so many on YouTube. So there is a question, I believe, that got sent to me privately. What are good ways to incorporate small steps towards self-care on an already packed schedule, COVID, kids, work? The easiest way to incorporate self-care day to day is breathing, right? Whether is the Qigong breathing, or it's deep belly breathing, or anything like that, right? Right now in COVID though, brushing our teeth is self-care, right? Taking a shower is self-care, right? I was talking to my sister the other day, and I don't remember what we were talking about. I was like, oh, it's been 3 weeks. And she's like, since you showered? And I'm like, no, I do shower more often than once every 3 weeks. But they're all self-care, right? Making your bed in the morning so you have that aesthetic visual pleasure is self-care, right? Having your coffee, tea, ice cream, food, all of those things are self-care, right? Sometimes when your schedule is really busy and your thoughts are so hectic, eating food can be really, really, really difficult, right? Boil some eggs, right? That's my like go-to breakfast because I'm always on the run. I go put my coffee pot on, toss 2 eggs in the pot, and then I come down, brush my teeth, wash my face. So when I go upstairs, my lunch is ready or my breakfast is ready. If I want to put 4 eggs, it's both, right? And your coffee. So you know, go about your day, starting it on a somewhat positive note and taking advantage of like the small things that are available to you that you can incorporate as self-care every day.
And I just want to take, speaking more specifically to incorporating mindfulness as self-care, everything that I've talked about can be as little as taking a minute. So you can go through all of those 7 steps. I mean, you don't have to visualize but just taking a moment and anchoring yourself to your breath for a minute is going to be helpful. And the other thing that I would say is that I don't know why this example came to me, but you know, a lot of these startup tech companies came into the work field, and then suddenly they're giving their employees like half days, and they can drink beer on the job and all of this, and they're noticing that the productivity is higher than for those who are doing 40 hours a week stuck in their office chair. And so my point in bringing that up is that what you might find is that incorporating self-care into your daily life routine, making that time is going to make you more productive when you actually do sit down to work. Because if you're completely overwhelmed and stressed every time you sit down for homework, you're going to not be able to accomplish, you're going to be able to accomplish in 2 hours what you would be able to accomplish in 1 hour if you have a clear head. So.
And I think it's very important starting to practice all this because, for example, yes, I agree. I totally agree with you, Eric. It's going to be more productive if you take that time. But for me, for example, I get a lot of guilt for not being doing things all the time. I'm being productive all the time. So even if I take a break, I'm like, well, I really should be at least reading right now, or I should be watching a lecture, or, you know, and that's not very motivating either. And I don't know where I heard that the other day, but it was like I don't know if it came up with speaking with Laviva too. If you're taking a break and you're still stressing about things, it's still not a break. So you need a break from the break. Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I just, you know, I can relate, first of all. And second of all, I just think it takes, this goes back to the patience in the 7 attitudes wheel, where it's not going to happen overnight. And especially for those of us who just have dealt with stress and anxiety, it's not easy. And so then it gets to this meta judging, where I'm judging myself about judging myself, you know? And so we just take it day by day, I guess. So.
Sorry, I was going to say, does anybody have any questions or comments, or they want to share some experience or things that are useful to you? Laviva, I don't know what you were going to say.
Most effective time of day for meditation. That is completely up to you, right? If you are a morning person, perhaps doing it at night would be better, right? So that you're giving yourself a boost when you're needing it the most. If you are a night person, perhaps doing it in the morning. Stretching can also count as mindfulness, right? We all, well, I don't know about all of us. I'm getting up there in age. So I get up stiff, right? Like my legs hurt, my hips hurt, my arms are sore, my neck is sore, all of those things. Stretch. That's mindful, right? Because it's bringing your awareness to the parts of your body that are sore. So whenever you can squeeze it in, right? Like you'll be thinking about this tomorrow. The minute you think about it, think of something that you can do in that minute, right? Deep breath. Somebody did something, I don't know, silly. Maybe it'll remind you of me. I don't know. Take a deep breath, right? You see a red light. Take a deep breath. Your sibling did something funny. Laugh with them, right? You see something funny. Laugh about it. You don't find anything funny? Laugh anyways, right? I used to have this professor that would get up in the middle of class, literally in the middle of class, put his hand on his belly, pop a squat, and go, ho, 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 right? The whole class would laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. He did it because of some neuroscience, something or other, because when you're sitting down for so long, your neural waves, whatever it is, I'm not a sciencey person, they start to like flatline, almost like a heartbeat when you're dying. Laughter wakes them back up and makes them go, you know, up and down and up and down and up and down. These are things that you can use every day, right? Even if it's not out loud laughing, right? I like using myself as an example because I know you'll remember how stupid this sounds, right? It's silly. So you'll remember, you know, Labiba squatted mid-Zoom meeting and did a weird Santa laugh, right? That will make you laugh later on, right? And that laughter is joy. It's mindful, right? It might be remembrance from the past, but it's something positive that you can use now to bring self-care and self-awareness.
Okay, I'm seeing one here. Can you distinguish distinguish the difference between meditation and mindfulness a little more? Can we use them interchangeably, or are they inherently different? That's a great question. So there's a lot of overlap, but they're not the same thing. And in fact, what I didn't really touch on is that there's all sorts of different types of meditation. So not all meditation is mindful meditation. There's meditation where you just repeat a phrase over and over again, right? And there's other meditations where you envision yourself in a relaxing situation and all of this. And so mindfulness meditation is just one form of meditation. Mindfulness also doesn't have to be a meditative practice, right? And Labiba really touched on that in her demonstration. It's mindfulness is something we can incorporate at any moment, right? We don't have to sit down. We don't have to close our eyes. I really like to do, I really strive to be mindful, although in a non-striving sort of way. When I'm on walks with my dog, and just because if I don't make an effort, I can so often just be caught in my thoughts, the past and the future, my assignments, and it's just taking the time during my walks with my dog to be present in that moment, enjoying my time with my dog, enjoying the weather, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's a great question. They're similar concepts, but definitely different.
I think we missed a question about group meditation. I think, Eric, you addressed the meditating by yourself thing.
Yeah.
There are online communities that will do meditation on Zoom. Pulling your kids in is possible. They don't like to do it, trust me, or they'll laugh at you. You can use them though in like hugs and things like that, but there are definitely plenty of online mindfulness retreats. There are videos that you can join in on. There you can pull your friends in, right? There's a group of you here. You can exchange contact information and schedule, a once a week group mindfulness. One of you can screen share and put on a YouTube meditation and then sit down and do it together. Right? It can be awkward to reach out and connect with people that you might not know. I do it all the time just because it's awkward and it's stressful, but it's fun, right? You have the potential of making a new friend. You have access to use Zoom with those friends, right? We're in a weird, new, very ambiguous world. And, but, thank God to whoever invented the internet and Zoom and laptops and all of those things, we are still able to connect, the human connection. And I don't think I've ever had this many people in my house before. You're all in my bedroom right now, right?
I do want to say too, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that when COVID ceases one day, hopefully 5 years from now, whenever it may be, hopefully soon with the vaccines, there's many resources throughout the Twin Cities, many places that you can go to meditate with others. There's the Zen Meditation Center that's right on Lake Bade Makaska, formerly known as Lake Calhoun. And there's, sorry, I'm blanking here. There's another good one that I have that I go to all the time. I can't remember why. I can't think of it, so I'll get back to you if I can think of it. Common Grounds Meditation Center. Common Grounds Meditation Center. like that place.
I'm not sure what Cloud on the Water is.
So we have time for one more question, and then Eric is going to guide us through our own group meditation.
Someone mentioned this, and so I just want to address it real quick. So someone said refuge recovery, and so I happen to be in recovery, and I happen to utilize refuge recovery. So and refuge recovery are also they're open groups, so you don't need to be in recovery to attend them. I think they're useful for everybody. So they do online meetings, and they meet in person as well. So I think refuge recovery is a great resource. So. There was one. Vanessa asks, are there any in person? I don't know if it went back to being not in person, but after everything went away, I know on Saturday mornings at near the lake, near one of the lake's community centers. I'm not sure. I think we'll have to look into that a little more. I haven't attended one in person since before COVID. So.
I read about some online Zumba classes. If that's like your thing, there was a Latin salsa Zumba this past weekend on Sunday at like 11. I believe they're called CMS Fitness, normally located in Bloomington. I'm assuming you could turn your camera off if you don't want to be seen Zumbaing, but right, it incorporates dance, music, and human connection.
Oh, and refuge recovery is now called Recovery Dharma. The
Kente Circle. That's what I was trying to think of when you were talking about places that do meditation. Kente Circle is one of them.
Okay, so Lucia's giving me the green light to do the meditation. Does anybody have one last question before I begin? Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. Just I want to remind everybody real quick. I'm going to go to the end of the presentation. And just to remind ourselves, I'm going to show this one more time too, just for you guys at home. I'm going to just keep that on the screen for a moment. And then I really want us to focus on this because this is going to be super important for us for these 5 minutes and whenever you choose to do it at home, is that we're going to sit and we're going to do our best to focus, and every single one of us, our mind is going to wander. And we're going to notice our mind wandering at a certain point. And the crucial step is to be kind to ourselves and to gently bring ourselves back into the present moment. So with that being said, if everybody wants to get into a comfortable position, whether that's in your chair, on the ground, or lying down, and if you're in your chair, you can keep your feet flat on the floor, perhaps with a straight back, your arms to your side. And when you're ready, you can gently close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths to begin here. And I want you to just begin our practice today by focusing on your breath, on the texture of the breath as it comes into your nostrils, feeling the air as it hits the back of your throat, and as it goes all the way down and fills up your belly. And notice the rise of your belly on the in-breath and it deflating when you breathe out. And you may notice some sounds in the room. You might notice the sound of a car driving by your house or your apartment. You might notice the pitch of my voice. And when you're ready, you can gently bring your attention back to the breath. The breath is always going to be a great anchor. And allow your breath just to have its own rhythm. There's no need to try to control it or make it any sort of way. Just noticing your breath, however it is, as it is. And you may notice your mind start to wander. You may catch yourself planning for tomorrow or what you're going to do tonight after this meditation is over. And that is totally okay. We all have thoughts. But in this moment, we want to do our best to just note that we're having a thought and let it float by. And then bring our attention back to our anchor, which is our breath. And just know whenever you happen to have a stressful moment throughout your day, this is a tool you can always rely on. You always have time to take a single moment to perhaps close your eyes, focus on the present moment, and then bring yourself back with a little more equanimity. And with a final breath, feel free to open your eyes and gently bring yourself back to the environment that we're in now. And hopefully this is something you will find helpful and something that you can utilize in your day-to-day moving forward. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was great. I want to give a special thanks to both of our speakers tonight. And thank you everybody else for coming and participating. Yeah, I thought there was a question there. No. I wanted to remind you that we have a monthly meeting tomorrow that you're more than welcome to participate in. We're going to use the same link as today. So you're invited for that. We are going to talk about these events, the takeaways, and we're also going to make some plans for next semester too. So please feel free to join us for that. I also wanted to remind you that you can contact us and send us any questions that you have through our email. You have some of the links available in the chat. Please, to those who didn't sign the attendance sheet yet, please do that now. We count on those attendance to keep doing events like this, as Chrissy mentioned. The recording for this event will also be available on Engage, and you also have the link in the chat there. Anything else that I'm forgetting? And as a last reminder, we would like to invite you to participate in the club as officers. So this is an opportunity for you to participate organizing events like this, working in a group setting. And also you can put that in your CV as experience too. So that looks great in your CV. So please email us if you have any other questions. I'm gonna hang out here for a little bit longer. And thank you again, everybody, for coming. The best of luck to you finishing the semester. I wish you a safe and healthy winter and have a great evening.
Thank you.